You're listening to the Footballogists with Kevin Gillikin and the Skipper Dude, covering the basics of sports betting.
You got an extra 2.5 points, so you won the bet 30.5 to 30. That's how point spreads work.
In-depth analysis of every NFL spread.
So Vegas is giving Baltimore with the win and 4 points to do so. Now, I think that's a crazy bet. Baltimore is a really good team. Miami is a terrible team. 4 points is not nearly enough. Baltimore should win by at least 1 touchdown. Easy. Bank it. Bet it.
Plus yearly and daily fantasy football.
Will he be the top fantasy quarterback for a year? No, but Jimmy Garoppolo is going to have a fantastic week 1. He's got all the people around him, and he's playing against a terrible Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense.
All with a focus on the human element.
We're talking about another Belichick disciple in his first year after almost zero experience as a coordinator in the NFL, and he has to somehow manage this quarterback situation with Josh Rosen and Ryan Fitzpatrick. Add that to Rosen's bad attitude and anything else going on in the Miami locker room, and it's just aiming for disaster for the season, for fantasy, for everything for the Miami Dolphins in 2019.
Please gamble responsibly.
I'm your host, Kevin Gillikin. You are listening to the Footballogists. Today, we'll talk about the AFC North, betting the over-unders of the total wins for this division. Will the Cleveland Browns take that next step forward with their second-year quarterback phenom, Baker Mayfield? And can Lamar Jackson also take a step forward as a second-year quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens? Who is going to win this division? One of the tightest divisions in all of football, except for the Cincinnati Bengals, who could be one of the worst teams in the entire league. Before we get to that, we'll send it over to the Skipper Dude, who will tell you everything about the basics of sports betting. If you've already listened to our show, then skip past his segment to the 9-minute 30 mark. After that, we'll get right into it and go over the Cincinnati Bengals and why you should absolutely bet the under. But first, Skipper Dude and the basics of sports betting.
Thanks, Kevin, for having me on and asking me to do a little overview of how NFL gambling works. I think this should be fun. So first of all, if you've ever been to a casino and you know how a casino works, you know that casinos don't actually make their money gambling. Casinos make their money facilitating gambling for others like you or me. If you play blackjack or craps or roulette, the casino is taking the other side of bets that you're laying down, but they've openly rigged the odds to where they will always win over time. Maybe not on 1 or 2 or even 10 particular gamblers, but with hundreds of thousands or millions of gamblers making what probably amount to hundreds of millions of bets, they will always win. The odds of every roll or every hand is very slightly in their favor, and that's what they count on over time to make money. Now, live poker, and I'm not talking about poker machines, but actually live poker, is a little different. Casinos are not involved in betting at all with poker. They're simply dealing the cards and taking a small cut of every hand or of the action. Some poker players will win big, others will lose big, but casinos will always take a very small cut on every game, and those wins, those cuts over time are what help make them rich. Now, sports gambling from a casino perspective is kind of a hybrid between blackjack and poker. So technically, when you make a bet, you are betting against the sports book. But the job of the sports book is to see to it that an equal number of dollars, not bettors, but dollars, are being bet on both teams. That's where they make their money. Now I'll explain. So let's say there's a game, hypothetically, in 2019, actually, this will come up, with Miami at New England. Okay, on paper, this is going to be a total blowout. Now, if casinos were to just take a bet on who will win this game, 98 or maybe even $99.50 out of every 100 are going to be bet on the Patriots. And when, as is likely, the Patriots win, it would leave a disaster for the casino. So they can't take that bet. Remember, casinos make their money little bits at a time when equal number of dollars are bet on both teams. And here's how they do it. So they have 2 different ways of evening things out and making the betting on both teams roughly equal. The first is called the point spread. Now let me switch over to a real life week 1 2019 game, and that's the Broncos at Oakland to play the Raiders. The Raiders are the favorite in the game, so to make the betting equal, casinos basically gift the Broncos 2.5 points, which is what they've done. So let's say the Raiders win that game 30-28. The Raiders won the game, but from a betting perspective, if you took the Broncos, you got an extra 2.5 points, so you won the bet 30.5-30. That's how point spreads work. Now, when you made your bet and you took the Broncos and the 2.5 points, you probably saw a line of -110. What that means is that you needed $110 to win 100. That's the -110. Now, to make the numbers here a little easier, we'll just say $11 to win 10. The guy who took the Raiders and gave up 2.5 points, he also had a line of -110, and he also bet $11 to win 10. So combined, the two of you bet $22, 11 plus 11. You won the bet, so you won 21. You won your original $11 plus the 10 that you won, the 11 to win 10. The Raider better got nothing. So the two of you combined bet $22. You got 21 back. Where did the extra dollar go? The casino kept it as a service fee. That's how they make their money. Now, the other standard way to bet on football games is what's called the line. It's fairly similar to the -110 I just discussed above, except that with the line, there is no point spread, and to win your bet, you only need your team to win the game. Now, it gets a little bit more complicated, the numbers do, but let's go back to the Broncos at the Raiders. The Broncos are a +125 to win that game, and the Raiders are a -135. What that means is that if you want to bet on the Broncos, a $100 bet on the Broncos will win 125, and a $135 bet on the Raiders will win 100. Okay, that's how lines work, and basically the same type of thing on that spread between 125 and 135. That's where Vegas makes its money. All right, so now beyond the basics, casinos also try to spice things up with bets like parlays, where you pick anywhere from 2 to about 10 or even more games, and you win money based on the number of games that you win. You actually have to win all of the games, and if you win them all, that's why it's called a parlay. You win multiple times your money. So let's say you picked 2 games and won them both. You'll win 2 times 2, or about 4 times your money, less the casino take. If you picked 5 games and won, you'll win 2 to the 5th power. You'll win 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, or 32 times your money. In real life, it's usually closer to about 30 times your money because, the casino is going to get its take. But you get the idea. So finally, I want to make a quick admonishment if you're considering betting on NFL games. I spent 2 NFL seasons in Las Vegas trying to win money betting football in addition to my regular job, and it is a whole lot tougher than you think. On paper, you actually only need to win 52.5% of the time. That's a calculation I did a while back in order to make money, but it's so much tougher to do that, it's hard to even imagine. In fact, the better I got at analyzing games during those 2 seasons, the worse I actually did betting. And I kind of learned how extremely far away I was from being able to forecast games well enough to make money consistently. For me, I got to kind of where I was like a scratch golfer betting wise. Pretty decent, but I was nowhere near being a PGA pro and nowhere good enough to make money consistently, because it's only those PGA pros of bettors who are going to actually make money consistently. So, as entertainment, sports gambling can be a ton of fun. I love it. It can help amplify the fan experience on game day and just make for a lot more adrenaline in watching the NFL. But as an addiction or as a money-making career, just don't go there. Just don't. Have fun with it and keep things in moderation. Kevin, back to you.
All right, if this is your first time listening to the show, you can go and check out 3 other shows so far this preseason. We have shows covering the AFC East, the AFC West, and the AFC South. Of course, today is the AFC North. Our show, The Footballogists, is all about betting in the NFL and a little bit of fantasy, all with a focus on the human element. The human element meaning injuries, new coaching schemes, drama in the locker room, who has to travel long distances for a week, etc. These types of things that affect these players as human beings. So we'll obviously go over some of the stats. We'll talk about statistics, but a lot of it is really the feel of the team. Is it a new coach? Does the coach have control over the locker room? Is there a dramatic running back or quarterback who are bringing the team down? Things like that. Now, we'll obviously go over, the Pro Football Focus rankings of many of the primary positions. We focus a lot on offensive line, on quarterback, and defensive points scored, etc. The things that I think are very important when it comes to betting over/under on a season. Now, when the regular season starts, we're going to get into betting every single game against the spread. So obviously, it'll be quite a different show. So we'll be focusing on each game and giving little tiny tidbits of information on why I think you should bet one team and why I think you should bet, the spread. Say if it's the Baltimore Ravens against the Miami Dolphins, and why I think the Ravens will win by more than 4 points, etc. And we'll go over, again, more basics of sports betting. The Skipper Dude will be along with us to help with the stats, with the numbers, and to help, fill us in a little bit on how we should think of things from explaining it to us like we're 5, right? That's how I need it. Now, I understand football pretty well, but the aspects of betting and mathematics, I am like a 5, maybe 6-year-old boy. So I'm very glad to have his help. He'll be with us during the regular season, and we'll also go over daily fantasy football at the end of the show for each regular season week. Now, for this show and for the other shows in the preseason, we'll talk about yearly fantasy at the end of the show, and again, focusing each and every podcast on one division, today being the AFC North, and we're going to start the show with the Cincinnati Bengals, the Bungles, the team that had one of the longest tenured coaches that could never really figure out a way to actually win, especially big games. They have new coaching staff, old quarterback, and are one of the teams that I think will be one of the worst teams in the NFL in 2019. Now, in 2018, they were 6-10, and partly they failed towards the end of the season. They had, I think, Jeff Driscoll was their quarterback because Andy Dalton hurt his thumb. They were a total mess in many ways. A lot of injuries, bad offensive line, not a very good defense, and not a whole lot going for them. This year they've got a couple decent youngsters. It'll be interesting to see if Tyler Boyd can have another good season at wide receiver, if Joe Mixon can continue to be a solid running back. But mostly it's not positive when we're looking at the Bengals. Now, the Bengals, again, last year were 6-10. Tipico is the company right now that I am using to base these bets off of. It is a European-based company. I think it might be based in Germany. Since I'm doing the show out of Germany, I cannot always access the websites for betting in the U.S. because there's these restrictions going across the border, so I use Tipico. Now, there will be some people, obviously, who use Bovada and other websites. These lines are going to be similar. So these are the Tipico lines. Now, they're not always the same, so it depends on where you go. But Vegas and other outlets are going to use practically the same lines. I mean, typically, they're not going to be a whole lot different. So Tipico has the Bengals this season at 6.5 wins, which means you can bet the over or the under. So in this show, I buy or sell. Am I buying the Bengals to win 7 games or more, or am I selling them and think they will win 6 games or less? Because again, Tipico has them at 6.5 wins. So for the Bengals, let's talk about, first of all, the primary things I look into, which are injuries, which are offensive lines, coaching staffs, etc. Now, Andy Dalton was their quarterback and has been for the last several years, and he is maybe the most whelming quarterback in football. Now, whelming meaning he's not great and he's not terrible. He's always kind of middle of the pack, and you see that exactly last year and this year. Pro Football Focus has him ranked as the 19th quarterback in the NFL in 2019. Now, actually, if you look at their site, they have him ranked 20th, but Andrew Luck was in the top 10, so I took him out, and now I just kind of moved him up a spot. So technically, Pro Football Focus had him ranked at 20th. Now, I think he'll be ahead of Jacoby Brissett, so I'll move him up to 19th. That's not very good, obviously. That's bottom half of the league. Now, last year, he was 15th in QBR, and obviously got injured and missed the last 5 games, I believe, in 2018. Is he going to be anything special? No, he never has been. I don't think he ever will be. He is the garbage time quarterback. He can put up big numbers, but when it comes to the limelight, when it comes to big games, he is just not very good. According to Cincy Jungle of the SB Nation, in SB Nation blog, I think his fan site, they have him, this is before 2018, at 5-19 in primetime games. 5-19 in primetime games. That's including the playoffs. That, ladies and gentlemen, is not good. This is a guy who crumbles under pressure, and, add that to what was really not a good coaching staff and a team around him that was not very good. It obviously ended badly for Cincinnati, and 6-10 was probably even worse than they could have had because, a worse record could have gotten them a better draft pick. Now, going into this season, there's already a problem with an injury. A.J. Green, their top receiver, one of the potentially top receivers in the NFL, is going to miss at least half the season with a serious ankle injury. So bad news for fantasy football players, obviously, and bad news for Cincinnati Bengals fans because he's really your key weapon on offense, and without him, Dalton is going to be even worse than he typically is. Now, Tyler Boyd had a good year last year. He had over 1,000 yards in 2018, but can he do the same as a number one receiver? We'll see. They don't have a whole lot behind him at receiver. John Ross at number 2. He's a high draft pick, but has never proven anything at wide receiver. I think he had the most dropped passes in the NFL last season. I'm not positive about that, but if I remember right, that's the stat. A guy who had a lot of hype, but just has not turned out to be very good. Now, Tyler Eifert is potentially back at tight end. He's a guy who's been injured a lot. He was injured most of the year last year. They hope that he can produce like he has in maybe 2016, 2017. I don't have his stats in front of me. Partly because in 2018 he didn't really exist in Cincinnati. So I don't have a whole lot of hope for him. The offense is going to revolve probably a lot around Mixon, and he's going to be running behind the 27th ranked offensive line according to Pro Football Focus. So not good. So the offense doesn't have much going for it. They have a decent running back and a quarterback who is below average. Put that behind an offensive line that's ranked 27th in the NFL by Pro Football Focus, and your offense is headed for a disaster. Now, their defense is ranked by Bleacher Report at 26th in the NFL heading into 2019. So 26th in the NFL. Now, I don't really love this ranking by Bleacher Report. I think some of their rankings for the AFC North are pretty bizarre, but we're still going to stick with it. We're going to say they're at least not going to be a good or for sure not a great defense. They will be definitely below average. Now, the one thing they do have going for them is they have, according to CBSSports.com, the 27th hardest schedule in the NFL this season, which means, it's one of the absolute easiest. If I remember right, it's actually technically the second easiest in 2019 because they're tied with, I think, 4 other teams for the 27th spot. So they will have one of the easiest schedules, but I don't always agree with the strength of schedules. They often go upon, I think they base it on the records from last season. And I think this year some of these teams are going to be better than people give them credit for. And so Cincinnati, I think, is going to struggle actually probably even more than some people think. Now, before we get into their schedule, which we'll do to end the segment about the Bengals, I want to talk about their coaching staff. Now, coaching staff is something I put a lot into. New schemes, new coaches. Can they control a locker room? Are they respected? And are they going to bring in an understandable scheme that these players can pick up immediately? And that's something that I think does not get nearly enough attention. Sometimes it works. Sometimes guys can come in and immediately succeed, but usually not. Usually your first year in the NFL is a struggle because players are trying to figure you out, they're trying to figure schemes out, and they're trying to just learn what the atmosphere is going to be in the locker room. We've said it over and over. This is part of why New England has been good for so long. They have a great coach, great offensive coach, and obviously Bill Belichick, and McDaniels being the offensive coach. And they've been there forever, and they have the same schemes. They have the same atmosphere. They have the same locker room. Everyone knows what to expect, and that's what people want. People want to have the norm. Now, obviously, the norm isn't good if you have bad coaches. I mean, that's sometimes the case. Obviously, look at Hugh Jackson in Cleveland. He was there a couple of years, and they were always bad. Now that just probably means Hugh Jackson was not a good coach. So you have to have both. Of course, you have to have consistency and good coaching. Now we don't know if the new head coach for Cincinnati, Zach Taylor, is going to be a good coach. Maybe he will, but he's done absolutely jack squat in the NFL. He's done nothing. He was a tight end coach for a year and then a QB coach for 1 year in LA. Which means he's rubbed elbows with Sean McVay, and that's why he got a job. End of story, period. Now, maybe he had a great interview. I don't know. Maybe he's an offensive genius. Maybe. We'll see. I mean, maybe he'll have the greatest year ever for Cincinnati. But these are all big, big, big question marks. And obviously, we have to go in with what we know. We know that he doesn't have any record, for sure any record as a head coach, and barely any record in the NFL. Which means, for one, that, the players... Are the players going to respect that? Where does he come from? Now, Sean McVay, I think, is a special dude. He's a dude that gets respect because he is 1 in a million type of a guy. You can't just expect someone who's rubbed elbows with him to be the same. Now, maybe he will, but do you really think it's going to happen again? Is there going to be another Sean McVay? Not likely. So this is a young guy who hasn't earned anything in the NFL. So is he going to get the respect of the players? Maybe, but it's likely not, at least not immediately. And add that to the fact that I think a lot of these NFL veteran coaches, say Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio has paid his dues. The dude has been in the NFL forever, and he's been a great defensive coach, and he's just now getting a chance to be a head coach. What do you think he feels about the Bengals and about Zach Taylor, a nobody, getting a job the same year he did? What? I really think that the head coaches are going to be gunning for guys like Taylor. They're going to be gunning for him. Guys like Brian Flores in Miami, they're going to be out there to get them. They're going to say, hey, you know what? These guys don't deserve to be here. There's a hierarchy in coaching. They care. There's pride in that. And they're going to say, hey, look, this is a dude I want to whip. And that's going to be Cincinnati this year. And look at the rest of their coaching staff. Brian Callahan, offensive coordinator, first time. Lou Anarumo, first time DC. They're guys with very little experience. They're youngsters. They look like they should be on a college staff. Now, again, I don't know they're going to be bad. Nobody knows what they're going to do. But if I have to predict, this is going to be a bad, bad, bad team in 2019. There's just nothing telling me otherwise. You look at their schedule, they start at Seattle. Ouch. Now, Seattle's not great, but they're definitely better than Cincinnati. At home against San Francisco. I like San Francisco this year. Loss. At Buffalo. I like Buffalo, especially at home. Loss. Pittsburgh. Loss. At home against Arizona. That's kind of a push, but I actually like Arizona's talent more than I like Cincinnati's. Believe it or not. Now, I don't like their defense in their offensive line in Arizona, but I still think, okay, we'll give it a push. Maybe we'll say Cincinnati wins that one. So they start 1-4. At Baltimore, loss. At home against Jacksonville, loss. At LA Rams, loss. At home against Baltimore, loss. At Oakland, loss. At home against Pittsburgh, loss. At home against the Jets, that's a push. We'll give them a win. At Cleveland, loss. At home against New England, loss. At Miami, we'll give them another win. At home against Cleveland, I'm going to give them a loss, but we'll potentially say a push. So at the absolute most, I have the Bengals winning 4 games. That's a great year, in my opinion, for this team. That's a great year. Typical has them at 6.5. Where does that come from? This is one of the craziest lines I've seen since I've been doing this show. There have been a couple teams I love. I love some of the unders. Miami, I love the under. I believe they're 6.5 too, maybe 5.5. Miami's going to win 1 or 2 games. Bengals are going to win 1 or 2 games. They're bad, guys. They probably want to be bad. They have a young coaching staff, a couple of young offensive guys, and they're going to rebuild. Do you think they see their future with Andy Dalton? Not likely. He hasn't done anything. Why? Why would you? Now, he's not super expensive. He's actually only getting $20 million a year, which surprised me, actually. So that's a plus for Dalton compared to these $35 million guys. He's not too expensive, but he's not a winner. Now, maybe he can do it with a new coaching staff, but maybe. Way too many maybes with this team. This is a great bet. Great. I love this. Totally sell. And that means bet the under. And this is one of my favorite bets in the entire season, the entire preseason. Bengals at 6.5 wins, no way in heck. Bet the under. Seriously, go right now. Bet the under on the Bengals because no way they're going to win 6.5. Go to Tipico right now and bet it, and I can almost guarantee this. This is in the bag. Love it. Okay, up next, perhaps my most controversial take of the entire preseason, and it's one of the favorites in the NFL this year, the youngest team in the NFL that I don't think they're going to be as good as everyone thinks they will be. That is the Cleveland Browns. After a quick break. Oh, Cleveland Browns. They have a place close to my heart. It was actually one of my first jobs out of, not university, but from the Colorado Media School. And I got a job covering the Cleveland Browns. I should say blogging, covering the Cleveland Browns for cover32.com. It was actually a very fun job. It turned out after a couple months, I became the editor for the Cleveland Browns website. So I had everything all to do with Cleveland. And they were terrible. And, they've been terrible for years and years and years. And the whole joke of how many quarterbacks they've run through, and coaches can be said about the same. And so I have a special place in my heart for them. They're kind of this team that you love because they're just bad. They're just like these ugly little kids that just, they're not going to go anywhere, but you have sympathy for them and you love them because they're kind of a sweet little guy. And it's kind of a city that you kind of root for, at least in terms of the Browns. And now they actually could be turning the corner. I mean, I think you could say they turned the corner. Last season they went 7-8-1. They had that tie, but just about went 500. And for the Cleveland Browns, 500 is fairly miraculous in the last 20 years. Now, they're an interesting team because they are the sexy team going into 2019. It's really unbelievable. I know it's weird to say that. I know I feel almost gross saying that, but it's true. They are the team that everyone is expecting to take the next big step. I mean, monstrous step. It's not just they're expecting them to be okay. They expect them to be in the playoffs and to win the AFC North. That's a lot. This is asking a lot for a very young team led by a second-year quarterback with, I believe I'm sure they are the youngest team in the NFL, and people expect them to take this huge step with a rookie head coach with almost zero experience in coaching in the NFL, and drama in the locker room, off the field, are guys who at least should create drama. I can't say there's been drama necessarily in this offseason, but there will be. There will be. Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham Jr. are extremely, extremely talented players, but they're going to bring drama. That's who they are. They thrive on it. Look at Baker Mayfield, planting the flag where did he do it? Texas, I think, right? Ooh, this is terrible. I should know that, but he planted the flag in one of his rivals, center of their field, and it was very controversial. But that's how he is. I think he's a good leader. I think players like him, but I think he's a guy who runs hot and cold. That's what I've seen. I mean, he had a really rough preseason game in his last preseason game, one of his worst really games in his career, preseason or not. And he came out afterwards and he seemed really cold and kind of, he accepted things. He said all the right things, but his attitude was a little questionable. Now, I'm not saying panic about it. I'm not saying too much about it, but he's a guy who I think you got to watch out a little bit. If things go wrong, we'll have to see how he behaves. How can he handle if things go wrong? Now, Odell Beckham Jr., we know doesn't handle things well when things go wrong. He wants things all his way, and he's one of the premier divas in the NFL. Now, he's also one of the most talented divas in the NFL and will bring a lot to that offense. Now, Baker Mayfield is ranked as the number 10 quarterback by Pro Football Focus going into 2019. I think that's asking a lot of him. Again, he's a second-year guy. I mean, I could see him going through a sophomore slump. Now, maybe not. Maybe he continues his success. He looked like a very pure passer. He's got a beautiful motion. He sees the field clearly. He seems to understand the game of football well. But oftentimes these rookies, they come in fresh and teams don't really know their weaknesses. Now, after playing a few games, I think 13 in the season, they're going to figure him out a bit. They're going to learn, okay, what does he do that we can work on? How do we attack Baker Mayfield? Now, Pro Football Focus also has their offensive line ranked at 20th, so they're not a very good offensive line. So and if you have like one injury on the offensive line, you're looking at even more trouble. So can he handle the pressure? Can Baker Mayfield handle the pressure of teams going after him? Cleveland is now the sexy team, which means teams that play against them are going to be playing up rather than down or, equal. That they're going to be playing up to them, which means teams are going to give a better effort. That's just the case. That's just psychologically the truth. Now, players always say, I give 100% every game against every opponent. No, they don't. It's just not true. I mean, now if you're really well coached, then I think that can be the case. And you see that in sports, really every sport. There are teams that play down to bad competition and up to good competition. They are good at overthrowing good teams, and then they go and lose to bad teams. I mean, I've seen it over and over in multiple sports. Now, we don't really know what this team is going to be. Can they handle the pressure of being the team? I mean, the AFC North, you got teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers who've been, really around forever. They've been winners forever. They've got a quarterback who probably will make the Hall of Fame, and yet these upstart youngest team in the NFL is being ranked ahead of you, is being said to win your division? No, come on. And the same with Baltimore. John Harbaugh is one of the best coaches in football. You really think he's going to be looking at Cleveland and saying, okay, yeah, you really think you're the best? You really think? And I think they're going to take it to him. I think especially in their division, the teams are going to be really playing hard against Cleveland. And I think that it's just bulletin board material, period, for the youngest team in football to be labeled as the favorites in the division. And that immediately, in my opinion, is going to be a negative on the team. Now, I like this team. I think they have a lot of talent on this team, a ton of talent on this team. I mean, Odell Beckham Jr., you got Chubb at running back, you've got Baker Mayfield, you got Landry at wide receiver. They've got a lot of talent. This could be a very good offense. The defense could be solid. I don't think they're going to be great. They were 30th in yards given up in 2018. Bleacher Report ranks them as the 18th defense heading into 2019. So they'll be, according to them, a little below average. So they're not going to be a great defense. They have talent, but they're not super deep. They have a decent defensive line. They have a couple guys in the defensive backfield that are solid. But I think they're being overrated, honestly. Now, their coaches, I think, also are being overrated. Freddie Kitchens is a first-year head coach. He came in to Cleveland last year as a running back coach and then was promoted to offensive coordinator after Hugh Jackson was fired. Now, no one can be a worse coach than Hugh Jackson. I mean, he's a guy I can never understand why he got jobs. He was terrible in Oakland. He's terrible in Cleveland. Really one of the worst coaches of all time. I think that his stats prove that. And you see some of these videos coming out from Hard Knocks and from their camp, and it's like the guy just, God bless him as a person, but wow. Not good. Not good things going on with Hugh Jackson. So you're going to have an upgrade. I don't think you can go down from him. Truly, I think he may be one of the worst head coaches of all time. And so you're going to get an improvement. But Freddie Kitchens hasn't done much. Now, he did improve that offense last year, but that's not saying a whole lot. They had a talented team, and his offense was good. But is he going to be able to take that step as head coach? He's kind of this backwoods, really chill dude who wears sweats and doesn't like talking to the media. He's kind of this throwback. I'm not even going to say throwback. Actually, he's not. I wouldn't say he's a throwback. He's a. I don't even know how to describe him. If anyone's watched Freddie Kitchens, he's Freddie Kitchens. What else can I say? But the guy he's rubbed elbows with Nick Saban and Bill Parcells. He was on their coaching staffs for a short time, so he has been alongside greatness. Now, does that mean anything? I don't know. I mean, it's just like Cincinnati. Is it enough to have been a coach with Sean McVay? I don't know. Is Zach Taylor going to be great because he coached with Sean McVay? No, you got to win on your own merit. Now, maybe Freddie Kitchens can. It looked like he had a good offense. But it's his first year in taking over the youngest team in football with big-time egos, big-time drama in the locker room. Now, again, this is a talented team, very talented. They got, Steve Wilkes is his first year as defensive coordinator. He was a head coach in Arizona and had a solid defense, but it's the first year in the scheme, first year in the offensive scheme. Now, Todd Monken comes over from Tampa Bay. They had a really good passing year last year with Jameis Winston and Fitzgerald. So maybe he can bring an even better attack on offense, but it's a new scheme. Everything is new. They're all young. They have, big egos, big heads in the locker room. This team is a scary bet. They're scary. Maybe they'll take that step. Maybe they'll be great because they have the talent to do it. But we can't only look at talent. The games are won by men, or they're lost by men. And these men have emotions and feelings. And when you start to add up all the things off the field for this team, off the stat line, off the paper sheet that says they're going to be great, I don't love it. I don't. Their defense isn't great. The O-line isn't great. They have new coaching staff. They have drama. Second-year quarterback in a new scheme. They're a team that could go either way. They could win 12 games, but I don't see it. They're in a really tough division, I think. Okay, not with Cincinnati. Cincinnati's terrible. But Baltimore, Pittsburgh, they're extremely veteran teams. Teams that have been around forever. They've been good forever. Cleveland is an upstart. But they're an upstart with a target on their back, and that's the difference. I think Cleveland is going to be 1 year away. I think they're close, but they're not there yet. They've got to get into this new scheme. They've got to understand what's going on. They've got to make sure the drama is worked out. They have to see if Baker Mayfield can repeat what he did last season. There are too many questions for this team to be 9.5 by Tipico. 9.5. I think that's a lot. Again, yeah, they went 7-8-1, but there's a target on them this year. There's a target on their backs. Everyone loves them. Everyone's betting on Cleveland. Hold your horses. Look at everything else going on with the team. People are only looking at Mayfield, Odell Beckham, and Chubb. You know, the defense it's solid. Denzel Ward is, okay, he's good. Is he good enough? Is he the whole defense? They've got some good players on defense, but you got some bad players on that defense. They're still a young team in a new scheme. Slow down on the Browns. This is not a for sure bet. I think so many people are picking the over on this, and this is why I think it continues to go up. Watch out with the Browns. I'm officially a push for the 9.5 because I think they could win 10 games. But if you make me bet this game, this team, I should say, their overall record, I'm going to go under. I have them at 9 or less. 9 or fewer wins in 2019. There are too many question marks. They're too young. Now, 2020 could be a different story. And I love the Browns. I'm cheering for the Browns. They're my boys. They're my number 2 team. But I think let's hold up. Don't bet everything on them. I can tell you right now, Cincinnati is a 10 times better bet than Cleveland in 2019. Bet the under on Cincinnati. Cleveland, probably just stay away from, but don't bet the over. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't let the media and everyone drag you into this whole idea of they're going to be the next thing. We don't know yet. Give it a year. Let's see. Can Freddie Kitchens be a good head coach with almost zero experience as a coach or as a coordinator? He's been in the NFL for a while, at least, better than Zach Taylor. So he actually has something. He's not going to be, I think, frowned upon by the NFL, hierarchy of coaches. But he doesn't have a lot of experience. He's a young coach in terms of being a coordinator, at least. Very young. New staff, new scheme, young team, drama. Don't bet him. Stay away from Cleveland. Okay, up next, we have another team that is kind of an enigma. We don't really know what to expect. The Ravens. No one really knows how to bet the Ravens. Tipico has them at 8.5 wins. And I'll tell you exactly why I think they're another team that you could feel confident betting. Now, is it the over or the under? Find out after this. So the question in the NFL, at least regarding the Ravens, is how much do you have to be able to throw the ball? Does a quarterback have to be able to be a good passer, even a decent passer, in order to win? Lamar Jackson was not a good passer in 2018. He looked rough. He didn't get a whole lot of opportunity either, but he is a guy that no one really has high hopes for as a passer. Pro Football Focus ranks him as the 26th predicted quarterback in 2019. He's raw. This is a guy who looks, in terms of running, like a Michael Vick. Really freakish athlete. Amazing athlete. And he's got a good arm. I think he's got the skills to be able to be a very good quarterback. He's shown off a bit. Now, he's got to show he's got the touch. He's got to show he can read defenses. He's got to show he can be a pocket passer, because as we all have learned over and over, if you're not a pocket passer, you will not last in the NFL. Andrew Luck just retired, for goodness sake. And that was, thanks, Andrew Luck. That was after I did my preview of the AFC South. And he's an example that, yeah, Luck was a pocket passer, but in his early career, he ran more than he should have, partly because his offensive line was deplorable, and now he's out of the NFL. And it's sad. I mean, Robert Griffin Jr., he's the backup in Baltimore. And you know why he's a backup? Because he got beat the heck up. Colin Kaepernick is out of the NFL. He's another guy. He couldn't be a pocket passer. You have to be a pocket passer. Yeah, the running gimmick is great. Fantastic. But it doesn't work. Eventually, teams figure it out, and you get beat to heck. So the Ravens have got to say that Lamar Jackson has to be able to become a pocket passer and, every now and then run the ball. Say like Russell Wilson. But first, he's got to be a pocket passer. We don't know if he will be. So they're a big question mark, honestly. They're a hard team to judge because their quarterback is such a big question mark. But the rest of the team, you got to like it. They've got the 19th hardest schedule, according to CBS. Now, Bleacher Report has their defense ranked at 17th overall. I think that's crazy. They were the first ranked defense in 2018. Yes, they lost Terrell Suggs. They lost Mosley, a couple others on the front. 7. They're still going to be a good defense. You can't tell me otherwise. They got a good coach. They've got still a lot of talent, especially in the secondary. No, they're going to be top 10 defense. I firmly believe that. Now, top 3, maybe not, but they'll be a top 10. So they've got a good defense. They have the 11th ranked offensive line according to Pro Football Focus, which is good. Not great, but it's good. Mark Ingram comes over from New Orleans as running back. He's very dependable. He's averaged 4.5 yards per carry in the last 4 seasons in New Orleans. He gets touchdowns. He's a guy who's dependable. He's a guy you can rely on for solid yards. Now, is he sexy? No, not really. But that's this team. This team is not going to be sexy. Now, I guess you could kind of say Lamar Jackson could be, but they're going to be a team that's going to be ground and pound, but their success will rely on Jackson. Can he be good enough from the pocket? If he can take that step, this could be a very good team. And I'll tell you why. They're talented on defense. They've got enough talent on offense. Now, they're relying a lot on rookie receivers. Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, who's a cousin of Antonio Brown, Miles Boykin. Their top receiver potentially is Willie Snead. That doesn't, blow my mind. But if they're talented rookies can step up, and if Lamar Jackson can get them the ball on time, this team could be really good. Really good. John Harbaugh is one of the top 3 coaches in the NFL. I don't have a question about that. Now, you could say top 4. Some people like Pete Carroll more than I do. I think Pete Carroll is a good coach. John Harbaugh, for goodness sake, was on the hot seat until the middle of last season, which is hard to believe. But I have it as Belichick, Reed, Harbaugh. Those are my top 3 head coaches. And you can argue a couple, again, maybe Carroll, maybe McVay. But either way, Harbaugh is a very good coach. Wink Martindale was the assistant coach of the year, had the best defense in football in 2018. He comes back. Greg Roman, he's been there for a couple years on offense. This is his second stint. They're familiar. This is a team that's very consistent. The coaches stay. Harbaugh's been there forever. He's a guy that the players love and respect, and he has a very set culture in that locker room. It's a solid culture. He's a coach that takes all of the blame. He doesn't throw his guys under the bus. He is a beloved coach and a good coach. That makes a difference. When you add him to a good offensive line, 2 good coordinators, a good defense, an easy schedule. They were 10-6 in 2018. Now, that was with Flacco and Lamar Jackson. A raw Lamar Jackson, and even more raw Lamar Jackson. And typical has them at 8.5. Now, so the question is, do you think this is a team that's 500 or below or over 500? I absolutely like them over 500. This is a 9-win team at least. If Jackson can be an average quarterback or even slightly below average quarterback. Again, the schedule is not that difficult. Great coach. Good defense. Should probably be the top running team in the league. So watch Mark Ingram, I tell you, he's a guy to watch out for. We'll talk about fantasy coming up, but he's a guy to look for. I think he could have a monster season because there's not a whole lot of guys behind him. So he could be catching balls out of the backfield. He could be running a lot, and they're probably going to be doing RPO. Jackson's probably still going to be running around. He's another guy who's interesting in fantasy. But look at the first 2 games for Arizona. Let's look at the first 5 games. It's at Miami, win. At home against Arizona, win. At Kansas City, tough, probably a loss. At home against Cleveland, I think it's a win. At Pittsburgh, tough. So you have some tough games, but I think this is something I really think is going for Baltimore. The preseason becomes less and less important, which means there are a few things that really matter to start the season in the NFL. For one, my number one is great coaching. Staffs that prepare their team and have them ready to go. Number 2, that goes right along with that, is consistency. The same schemes. Players understand what they're doing. They understand where they're going with things. They don't need to learn that much in the preseason. This is what we've seen in LA with the Rams. Sean McVay started that whole trend of not playing anyone through the preseason. And he can do that because he's a really good coach and he's been there. He's consistent. It's the same scheme. Also, teams that can play defense and can run the ball. Check, 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 check. These are 4 checks, all in favor of Baltimore. Majorly in favor. Big time in favor. Great coach, extremely consistent locker room, good defense, and a very good ground game. That speaks to me that they are going to be hot out of the gate. So actually, when you're looking at Kansas City, I might even bet them. At Pittsburgh, I might bet them. Tough. The at Pittsburgh game is going to be, I think that's going to be one of the top games, perhaps, of the season. 2 really good teams going against each other with somewhat similar, in a way, structures. Not the same offenses, obviously, but otherwise kind of similar. We'll talk about Pittsburgh in the next segment. But then after Pittsburgh, and I think they go 4-1 in the first 5, and then it's at home against Cincinnati and at Seattle, win-win, and then they have a bye in a good spot. Then it's at home against New England. Tough team. That's a game I think they can win. And then it's at Cincinnati, at home against Houston, win-win. At the Rams, okay, tough. At home against San Francisco, win. At Buffalo, that's a ugly game that they can win. Jets, Cleveland, Pittsburgh. The last 2 games are a bit rough. At Cleveland, at home against Pittsburgh. But this is a team that can win 9 games. I mean, mark my words. I think they could win 9 games fairly easily. I think they could win 11 or 12 if Lamar Jackson can be a solid quarterback, which I think he could. He's got the talent. But we don't know yet if he's got the brain, and that's no offense to him. There are very few people in this world who have the brains to be quarterback. Very few, maybe 12 in the entire world, as we've seen. Now, can he do that? Can he figure out defenses? Can he read defenses pre-snap and post-snap? We'll see. I've got no idea. Maybe not. And if he can't, then, yeah, their ceiling is probably 10 wins. But they got a good team, and they got great coaching staff, and that is going to win them 9 games at least. So I am buying the Ravens. I'm betting the over. Again, Tipico has them at 8.5. I think that's a fantastic bet. And I think they start hot. So as we go into the season and we start betting every game against the spread, I guarantee you're going to see me betting on Baltimore a lot, especially at Miami. The last time I saw the line against Miami, it was 4 points. That means they have Baltimore winning and giving them 4 points only. Geez, I think Baltimore can win by 20. Miami's brutal. As you hear in the start of the show, that's one of the takes, and I still totally feel that Baltimore's good, Miami's not. So watch them to start the season especially, and that will be good news for Jackson that he's got 2 easy games, Miami and Arizona. He can warm up a bit, he can learn a little bit, he can get comfortable in that offense, and watch out. Baltimore is a team to look out for in the AFC North and in the AFC period. If Jackson figures it out, this could be a really hard team to beat. Now, there is a team that is going to be right up there with them, battling them nose for nose. They could have the 2 best games this season, perhaps, in the entire NFL, as they have for the last 20 years. The Pittsburgh Steelers. They've lost Antonio Brown, but is that good or is it bad? We'll talk about that and much more about the Pittsburgh Steelers after a quick break. Okay, here is a team in the Pittsburgh Steelers who is getting absolutely zero love. They're just not getting enough. No one is respecting them like they should. And I think part of it is because they lost Antonio Brown. Now, the question is that a positive or a negative? Now, yes, they're going to miss out on the field. He's one of the best receivers in football, period, end of story. Now, clearly, he was a cancer in the locker room, at least in the Pittsburgh locker room. I'm not saying he's a cancer everywhere, but he was there. And at least that friendship or lack thereof with him and Big Ben and everyone else was not good. And you hear that from guys like Ryan Clark, who was his former teammate. And he says it all the time, I think, on ESPN, that, yeah, Antonio Brown is a diva that's not a very good teammate. And he said that. Now, and Emmanuel Sanders has said practically the same thing. Also a former teammate in Pittsburgh. And so, he's gone. So, whatever. Why are we always talking about Antonio Brown? They've got one of the better receivers in football in Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, he's a guy who's got all the explosiveness and all the talent you need at that number one position. Now, obviously, the question is, do they have enough around him? But first, you got to talk about Big Ben. Roethlisberger is probably a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's at least on the edge of it. He's a 2-time Super Bowl champion. In 2018, he was a 4th-rated quarterback according to QBR. He had the 2nd most pass yards per game in 2018 with 313 yards per game. Pro Football Focus ranks Big Ben as the 7th best quarterback in football for 2019, and I think that could be even too low for him. He's a top 5 quarterback still. The guy puts up yards and stats every single year, and they've done it with different receivers. He's done it forever. You remember Mike Wallace? Remember Emmanuel Sanders? Antonio Brown? Juju Smith-Schuster? He's going to do it more. I mean, he's so good at creating time and making big plays. He's going to keep doing it. Now, eventually, it's going to catch up with him. But he's a guy who's lasted longer than most people expected to, because he takes hits as well. But he's still there. He's a great quarterback. He's one of the best in football. So that's number one. Boom. The Steelers went 9-6-1 in 2018. Lost some rough games, and they did miss Le'Veon Bell at running back. They had the 31st ranked running game, or 31st in rushing yards at least. James Conner was solid though, and I think Conner is in line for a bigger season. Last year he had 973 yards, 12 touchdowns, averaged 4.5 yards per carry. So he wasn't great, but he was good, and I think he'll be even better this season. According to CBS Sports, they had the 19th easiest schedule. According to Bleacher Report, they had the 2nd ranked defense heading into 2019. They have the 3rd ranked offensive line. What are you seeing about this team that has them at 9.5 wins? They have a great quarterback, a great offensive line, a great defense, a coach who's been there a long time. Mike Tomlin's in his 13th season, one of the longest tenured in football. Now, think of him as you will. Some people think he's too friendly with the players. He's too much of a bro. And that probably was a problem with guys like Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown. But you know what? They're gone. So I think as the locker room goes, so goes Mike Tomlin. Now, yeah, that's probably not a great thing. But you know what? It's consistent. He's there. The guys know what to expect. Randy Fichtner, in his 2nd season as offensive coordinator, the team had the best red zone percentage with 73.5% in the NFL. Conversion, that was best in 2018. Keith Butler in his 5th season as defensive coordinator. Kevin Colbert, however you pronounce it, has been the GM since 2000. The Rooneys have owned them for like 80 years or something. They're extremely consistent. They've had like 3 head coaches in the past 50 years or something like that. It's remarkable. It's not always good, but they've won a lot of Super Bowls. A lot of Super Bowls. And part of it is because guys know what to expect. They have a very good organization. From top to bottom. It's respected. It's consistent. And it's well run. Ownership. GM. Coaches. And you put that together with a very good quarterback. A good offense. Dante Moncrief as a number 2 is solid, not great, but solid. James Washington in his second year is a guy that people really love. They've loved him in the preseason. They think he could become your number 2 with Dante Moncrief being your number 3. James Conner could have a big year. McDonald at tight end is solid, not great, but solid. They're going to have another good passing team. They always do, and they're going to again. And if their defense is as good as Bleacher Report thinks they will be, watch out. 9.5 wins is not nearly enough. Not nearly enough, in my opinion. Everything is in favor of Pittsburgh. Everything. Similar to Baltimore. Great coaching, good defense, even maybe a great defense, good offensive line, easy schedule. You know what they have that Baltimore doesn't have? A quarterback. Now, they start the season at New England. Talk about a great game. Oh, my goodness. That's the evening game on the first Sunday. Yeah, it's going to be unbelievable. And I think Pittsburgh can win. Absolutely. I think that's going to set the tone. If they win that game, watch out. Watch out. Because then it's at home against Seattle, at San Francisco, at home against Cincinnati, at home against Baltimore, and at the LA Chargers. That's not an easy schedule. But if they come out of that at 4-2, you're looking good because you have a bye, and then you have Miami and Indy. Win-win. LA Rams at home, that's winnable. At Cleveland, tough, but I don't think Cleveland's as good as people think, as you know now. Cincinnati's a win. At home against Cleveland's a win. Arizona a win. Buffalo a win. Jets a win. How many games do you see on the schedule that are losses? Not many. I mean, their hardest games, I'd say the LA Chargers, that's a tough game. But the Chargers are already kind of banged up and look like they're a team that they're destined to fail and to be hurt all the time, unfortunately. I like Phillip Rivers. I hope he wins this year, but boy, just nothing goes right for the Chargers. So who knows how that's going to be. Cleveland on the road, okay, that's tough. Baltimore on the road's tough. But that's the last game. I think by that point, they're going to have 11 wins or so, or 12. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me why this team is at 9.5. They look absolutely set to be one of the top teams in the AFC. No question. New England's going to be one of the top teams because they're New England and they have the easiest schedule in the NFL, or the second easiest. And they play in a terrible division. So watch out for Buffalo. Buffalo's going to be decent. Check out my AFC East predictions. That's in another video. Kansas City Chiefs are going to have a great offense, but their defense isn't fantastic, and I think Mahomes is going to have a step-back year. I like the Chargers, but you know what? They're always hurt, and they don't win big games. Kind of like Cincinnati. Who does that leave? I mean, Baltimore, they're going to be better, but they don't have a quarterback. So I think they win 9 or 10 games, but you know what? Who is better in the entire AFC than Pittsburgh? They've got the quarterback. They got a good running back. They got a great offensive line. They got a great defense. They've got a good coach. They've got it all. 9.5 is I think that's a crazy low line. Crazy. I would bet the over on that every day and twice on Sunday. It's a low risk bet. It really is. I mean, again, look at their schedule. That's not a hard schedule. A couple hard games, but they could go 13-3. Absolutely. If they stay healthy, absolutely 13-3. I think they could win. I think they could win the AFC. I think they could be the first seed. Absolutely. It could be Pittsburgh, New England. They're just all around solid. They're an all around good team. There are very few weaknesses on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so absolutely buy them. No brainer. They're really, this is one of the easiest divisions to bet for me. That there are two very easy picks. Bet the under on Cincinnati. Absolutely bet the under on Cincinnati. 6.5 wins, way too high. They win 2 or 3. The Steelers, 9.5, way too low. They could win 12 or 13. Bet the over on the Steelers. The under on Cincinnati. The other two teams I don't love, I'm buying the Ravens, but, by half a game or a game. So I like it. I don't love it. Cleveland, I would just stay away. 9.5 is, I think that if I had to bet, I'd go under, but just don't bet them. I think they're too unpredictable. They're too young. So just don't bet the Browns. Stay away from the Browns. But two absolute secure bets. Bet the Steelers to win over 9.5 and bet Cincinnati to win under 6.5. And you will be happy. And you can text me. Find me on Twitter at Kevy Gillikin. That's KEVVYGILLIKIN. Find me, at me, and say, Kevin, thank you so much. At the end of the season, you can thank me and say, you're the guy who made me rich. You're the man who pointed this out to me, that the AFC North has two winners, and I bet them, and I thank you for it, and I love you, and you're the best. Okay, enough. Okay, up next, now that we've talked about the AFC North, we're going to talk a short segment about the fantasy players to look out for in this division, who you should buy, who you should sell, and this is for yearly fantasy, not daily, because we don't do that until the regular season, which we will do every single week, but only when there's actual football to be played. Fantasy football up next. Okay, just a wee bit of fantasy to finish our show. Obviously, again, talking fantasy in the AFC North, and this is yearly fantasy. In the regular season, we'll talk daily fantasy. Now, I really want to focus on a couple guys that are not getting nearly enough love. I want to start first at the quarterback position. When you look at quarterback, and I know it's not always the most important position in fantasy, blah, 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 but still, Baker Mayfield is getting drafted at an average of the late 5th round, 50th pick or so overall, which is okay. Yeah, I kind of get it, but there's this question. It depends on what leagues you're in and why you're drafting guys, where you're drafting him. Ben Roethlisberger is getting picked at around the 113th pick average. He's like double behind Baker Mayfield. What on earth? In 2018, Ben Roethlisberger averaged 21.3 points per game. That was in fantasy. That was 3rd overall. Now, where was Baker Mayfield? Well, he was tied with Matt Barkley, as a matter of fact, at 17.1 points per game, which is behind Josh Allen. It's behind Wentz. It's behind Brady. It's behind Cousin, behind Winston, behind Rivers, behind Prescott, etc. And yet, he's getting picked over Roethlisberger? Okay, I understand. He's got OBJ. Cool. He's got Freddie Kitchens for a whole year. Are you kidding me that he's getting drafted 5 rounds before Ben Roethlisberger? What? Totally. If you're going to spend that high of a pick on Mayfield, just wait for Roethlisberger. For goodness sake, Roethlisberger is a magician when it comes to fantasy points. He puts up yards every year. It doesn't matter his receivers. Before Brown, it was Wallace. He's always done it. I would bet on him every day. Man, I mean, this is a great pickup. Stay away from Baker Mayfield in the 5th round and absolutely pick up Roethlisberger in the 10th or 12th. Crazy. So yes, I'm selling Mayfield. I'm absolutely buying Roethlisberger in the 10th or 12th round. Insanity. Okay, you have a lot of good running backs in this division. There's not a whole lot I can say about it. Nick Chubb in top 10, James Conner top 10, both fittingly very talented guys in good running schemes. Joe Mixon is in the late 2nd round. I don't know what to think about Joe Mixon. It's a little high for me, but I understand. He's a talented guy. I mean, in the list I have in front of me on yahoo.com, I have him ahead of Todd Gurley, ahead of Marlon Mack, ahead of Aaron Jones. I don't know. There are other guys there that I think you can pick higher. Derrick Henry is a guy I think absolutely. Kerryon Johnson, I like better. A guy I like in the division, Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram is going in the 5th round, in the middle of the 5th round. Mark Ingram is a really solid running back who scores touchdowns. He's probably going to get a ton of carries and a ton of receptions out of the backfield because Baltimore doesn't have anyone else in the backfield. Mark Ingram is a great middle round pick at running back. In fact, I like him better than a lot of these guys going in the second and third rounds. Okay, maybe not better, but as good as Joe Mixon, Mark Ingram. I honestly could see Ingram having a better year. It's a stretch. It's a risk, but you're getting him in the 5th round. High ceiling, low floor for Mark Ingram. Absolutely buying Mark Ingram. Now, in terms of wide receivers, obviously A.J. Green is the big name that's injured, so don't draft A.J. Green unless it's in like the 16th round, perhaps. Odell Beckham Jr. is being drafted in the high 2nd round. It's a risk. I don't blame you for doing it. It's a risk, though. Juju Smith-Schuster is in the beginning of the 2nd round. I would pick Schuster over Beckham. Schuster's got Big Ben. Big Ben just feasts in fantasy. Receivers with Big Ben are incredible. Draft him. He's a great pick. Other than that, Tyler Boyd, okay. Late round, sure. And they've got A.J. Green even in the 7th round. I don't know. That seems too high to me. He's out for half a year. You don't want to get him for half a year in 7th round. And Yahoo has A.J. Green going ahead of DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Josh Gordon, Will Fuller. No. A.J. Green's going to be out, bro. I wouldn't pick any of the Cincinnati receivers, really, unless it's a great position, obviously. James Washington is a sleeper that a lot of people have going higher. Yahoo's got him ranked in the 13th round. He's a good flyer, I think. He could become their number 2, and their number 2 is a 1,000-yard guy. That's just how it goes in Pittsburgh. I would stay away from Landry in Cleveland. And I would stay away from any of the Baltimore receivers because we just cannot trust Jackson. That's all I've got. Go and get Ben Roethlisberger in the late rounds. Don't get Mayfield in the top 5. Just don't do it. And that's all I've got for today. Thanks for listening to the Footballogists in the AFC North. Up next, we'll go into the other league. We'll start into the NFC, and we will discuss the NFC East. Thanks for listening.
Said seagulls gonna come, hook me in the coconut, and they did, had me going like, nothing I could do but yell when these birds attacked me. When I tried to run, I fell, and then these kids started laughing.
Yeah, whatever, you're sort of pitchy.
Didn't like it?
Listen, man, I'm not your friend.
Don't fall asleep.